consciousness. According to the Gnostics, not every human being experiences reality in the same way. That single idea quietly challenges almost everything we assume about ourselves and the world we live in. What if the way most people move through life, following routines, chasing comfort, accepting answers handed to them, is not the full picture, but only one layer of a much deeper structure? The Gnostics suggested that humanity was never meant to be understood as one uniform whole, and that what we call normal life may actually be a carefully maintained surface. In 1945, when a farmer uncovered a collection of sealed clay jars buried beneath the Egyptian desert, hidden there for more than 1,600 years, he unknowingly brought that forgotten perspective back into the light. Inside were the Nag Hammadi texts, writings so unsettling to established worldviews that entire empires had once tried to erase them from history. These texts did not focus on race, status, or intelligence, but on levels of inner awareness, suggesting that humanity unfolds across three distinct types of consciousness, each with a very different relationship to truth. And here is where this becomes personal. If these ideas resonate, if something in you feels stirred rather than threatened, this video is not about judging others, but about inviting you into a deeper examination of yourself. The Gnostics believed that understanding this inner map could change how you see your life, your struggles, and your sense of purpose. Because only one path, they said, leads beyond the prison of this reality. If the sense that something unseen is shaping your life has been quietly growing, this is where the old perspective begins to open. The Gnostics were not concerned with labels the world obsesses over, like race, class, or intelligence, because those describe the surface, not the source. They spoke instead about essence, the hidden current that animates a person from the inside, the silent force behind attention, desire, and choice. In their symbolic language, humanity expressed itself through three inner orientations, often called the Hylic, the psychic, and the pneumatic, each moving at a different frequency of awareness. Most people never encounter these ideas, and even fewer pause long enough to wonder which current is quietly directing their own life. Yet once this pattern is glimpsed, it begins to appear everywhere. You start noticing it in the rhythm of conversations at work, in family dynamics, in the way crowds react and repeat themselves. The world feels less accidental, less chaotic, as if a hidden structure has been revealing itself just long enough for you to notice, and that recognition alone begins to shift how you move within it. As that hidden pattern settles into view, the first figure to emerge from it carries a quiet, unsettling familiarity. The Gnostics began with what they called the Hylic, a word rooted in the ancient term for matter, pointing not to a group of people, but to a way of existing entirely shaped by the visible world. These beings were not described as cruel or lesser, and no condemnation was placed upon them. Instead, they were seen as lives guided almost exclusively by sensation, appetite, and immediate need, moving from desire to satisfaction without ever turning inward to ask why. In this mode of being, awareness clings to what can be touched, owned, consumed, or feared, and meaning is measured by comfort and survival alone. The Gnostics spoke of this state as one without the inner breath that reaches beyond the surface, a life animated by instinct rather than remembrance. Such individuals flow with the rhythms of the system effortlessly, adopting trends, obeying authority, avoiding discomfort, and mistaking motion for purpose. They do not sense a longing for something beyond the visible horizon, not because it has been denied to them, but because nothing inside them strains toward it. In the old symbolic language, This orientation was shaped by the demiurgic order itself, designed to sustain the machinery of the material world. These lives become the labor, the consumption, the repetition that keeps cities breathing and systems turning, forming the quiet foundation upon which everything else rests. Without this orientation, the visible world would lose its structure, its continuity, its momentum. Yet within this role, there is no impulse to resist or rebel, because rebellion requires an inner spark that feels the difference between surface and depth. This was never framed as an accusation, only as an observation woven into Gnostic cosmology. In their mythic telling, such lives were formed by the archons rather than the true source, bodies animated by habit and necessity, complete within their own boundaries, yet untouched by the fragment of eternity that defines the higher paths. And as this picture unfolds, it invites a pause, a moment to notice where one's own attention has been resting, and whether the pull towards something more has ever quietly stirred beneath the noise of daily life. Because this pause does not come often, and when it passes unnoticed, life usually continues exactly as it was. As that quiet question lingers about whether a deeper pull has ever stirred beneath the surface of your life, the Gnostic story reaches its turning point, where everything subtly but decisively shifts. The ancient texts speak of a third orientation, the pneumatic, a word drawn from the breath itself, hinting at something alive, unseen, and intimate. This way of being was said to carry the most complete expression of the inner spark, not merely animated by emotion or thought, but moved by spirit, the same living current believed to flow from the pleroma, the realm of fullness beyond the reach of the false order that governs appearances. The pneumatics were never described as many. They were rare, scattered across history as mystics, heretics, and restless seekers who could not settle into the answers handed to them. They carried a quiet certainty that something in this world felt wrong, that the stories felt rehearsed, that authority spoke with borrowed voices, and that beneath the surface of things lay a truth demanding to be remembered. These individuals often tried, sometimes for years, to fit themselves into the structures that seemed to satisfy everyone else, to believe what they were told, to find peace in systems built for others. Yet an unease remained, a friction that would not fade, a sense of never feeling fully settled, as if the world itself had not been shaped with them in mind. Over time, many stopped forcing themselves into forms that could not hold them, and turned inward instead, drawn toward gnosis, not as belief, but as direct knowing, an inner recognition beyond words. The texts suggest that once this knowing is tasted, even briefly, there is no return to sleep, because illusion loses its grip the moment it is seen. In Gnostic myth, this is why such individuals were viewed as dangerous, not through violence, but through clarity. They could not be bought with comfort, distracted by pleasure, or soothed by doctrine. They recognized the counterfeit nature of the world as it is presented, and refused to kneel before a power that claimed ownership over their inner light. This refusal, quiet but unyielding, is why such figures were often silenced, their writings destroyed, their voices erased. For a world filled with those who remember who they are is a world where false authority begins to dissolve, and the breath of something greater moves freely once again. As the idea of that quiet resistance settles in, a more intimate question naturally rises from it, one that feels less like theory and more like a mirror. How do you recognize where you stand within this inner landscape? The Gnostics suggested that the very act of wondering often appears at a precise moment and rarely stays for long. Those who remain fully absorbed in the surface of life rarely pause to ask such questions, rarely feel drawn toward what lies beneath appearances. Their attention rests comfortably on what can be seen, measured, and repeated. So the real tension unfolds elsewhere, in a subtle space between two ways of knowing. One turns outward, searching for certainty in voices, texts, traditions, or systems that promise answers ready-made. The other grows quieter, sensing that whatever is most real cannot be handed over, only recalled. This inner orientation does not reject learning, but it recognizes that truth reveals itself through direct experience, in moments of stillness where no authority speaks. If you have moved through life feeling slightly out of place, questioning even when it cost you belonging, sensing that accepted explanations never fully satisfied something deeper, the old texts would have recognized that restlessness. If you have felt drawn toward something you cannot clearly name, a homesickness without a location, it was described not as imagination, but as memory stirring. And if you have ever looked at the world and felt that it could not possibly be the final shape of reality, that sense was treated as a quiet signal, a whisper from an origin older than belief. As attention turns toward that whisper, something begins to shift. The stories loosen their hold, the surface cracks just enough to let light through, and what once felt unquestionable starts to reveal itself as far more fragile than it appeared. As the surface of those stories begins to loosen, a deeper tension quietly reveals itself, because awakening was never meant to be easy. The old texts suggest that the world you move through each day is shaped in a way that gently, persistently pulls attention away from the inner spark. Systems, institutions, and endless distractions do not appear hostile on the surface, yet they keep the mind occupied, anxious, and outward-facing, leaving little space to listen inward. In Gnostic imagery, this was the work of unseen forces that understood one thing clearly: a person who remembers their inner knowing cannot be controlled in the same way. So, the spark is buried under habits, expectations, noise, and borrowed identities. Many feel this pressure as restlessness or quiet frustration, sensing that something is off without being able to name it. They move through life feeling resistance without understanding its source. This is why the Gnostics spoke so insistently about gnosis, not as belief or obedience, but as a direct recognition that arises from experience itself. It is not something learned from the outside, but something stirred awake from within. In their symbolic language, the prison was never built from walls or chains, but from stories about who you are supposed to be, where you belong, and what you are allowed to seek. When those stories are seen as stories, their grip begins to weaken. Attention turns inward, even briefly, and touches something untouched by fear or conditioning. In that moment, nothing dramatic needs to happen. The shift is subtle but irreversible. The walls do not shatter loudly, they simply lose their authority, and what once felt solid begins, quietly, to fall away. As the walls lose their authority and the noise begins to fade, a quieter realization takes shape, one that reframes everything that came before. The Gnostics never spoke of these three orientations as a ladder of superiority or moral worth, but as a map of inner movement, a way of understanding how consciousness unfolds. One orientation remains bound to matter, absorbed in the visible and the immediate. Another becomes entangled in belief, mistaking inherited stories for living truth. And another begins, slowly and often painfully, to awaken beyond both. In this telling, difference was not condemnation, but description. And yet, woven into this map is a tension many find unsettling. If not everyone carries the same inner capacity, what does that mean for those who remain at the surface? Can a life shaped by habit shift into reflection? Can belief soften into direct knowing? The ancient texts never offer a single answer. Some traditions hinted that these orientations were set from the beginning, while others suggested that under certain conditions, something dormant could be stirred awake. Where they converged was in a quieter observation. Most people do not awaken, not because they are unable, but because awakening asks too much. It asks for the release of familiar identities, the courage to question what has always been accepted, and the willingness to stand alone without guarantees. For many, the comfort of the known, even when hollow, feels safer than the openness of the unknown. This was not framed as failure or weakness, but as the natural gravity of a world structured to reward sleep. In Gnostic imagery, the forces shaping this world favor distraction over stillness, reassurance over doubt, belonging over truth. Comfort, fear, and social pressure work together to keep attention anchored outward. For those fully at home in matter, there is no inner friction, no spark to conceal, and life flows smoothly along its established paths. But if you have stayed with these words, if something within you has leaned closer rather than turned away, the old stories would not place you there. You may sense yourself hovering between belief and remembrance, or feel like one who once knew and forgot. Either way, that stirring is not accidental. It was described as the spark, recognizing its own reflection, a fragment of something timeless, responding to its source. Once that recognition begins, it does not fade back into silence. It deepens. The question then becomes not what to believe, but how to listen. The Gnostics spoke of a beginning that did not involve instruction, authority, or doctrine, but a deliberate turning inward, a pause, a willingness to sit beneath the noise and ask who you are beyond your roles, your history, your name, even your thoughts. In that stillness, the answer was never said to arrive as explanation. It emerges as recognition, a sense of familiarity older than language, and in remembering, something essential shifts. You no longer experience yourself as a product of this world alone, but as a presence moving through it, a spark of the eternal touching form without being confined by it. And as that quiet remembering settles, there is no need for anything dramatic to happen. Nothing has to be proven, claimed, or announced. Something has simply softened inside you, as if a tension you carried without noticing has been gently set down. The searching that once felt urgent can rest for a moment, because what you were reaching for was never truly outside of you. If parts of this journey felt familiar, unsettling, or strangely comforting all at once, that response was not accidental. It does not mean you are late, or behind, or missing something essential. It suggests that you are exactly where you need to be for this season of your life, moving at a rhythm that is your own. The Gnostics spoke of remembrance not as an escape, but as a quiet return, a gradual reorientation toward what has always been present beneath fear, doubt, and borrowed stories. If certain words lingered, if certain images stayed with you longer than expected, allow them to do so without rushing to interpret them. Understanding does not always arrive as clarity. Sometimes it arrives as trust. You have not wandered off the path, and you have not been overlooked. The questions you carry, the pauses you take, and even the uncertainty you feel are part of the unfolding itself. Nothing here asks you to force belief or abandon what grounds you. It simply invites a softer way of listening, one that unfolds over time. And if this reflection has opened a small door inside you, Know that it does not close when the video ends. There are layers to this story, and they reveal themselves gradually as you are ready, not all at once. You are not alone in this process, and you do not need to hurry. When the time feels right, the next step will appear, often in the form of another question, another moment of recognition, another quiet remembering waiting just beyond the surface.